On a related note, Professor Norman Fenton, whom you've seen on the Mark Steyn show, says, Mark, I'd love to hear your views about Andrew Bridgen's resignation from the Reclaim Party. The Reclaim Party is Lawrence Fox's party. And I think just a few hours ago, Loza and Andrew parted company. And they said they issued a statement saying they felt they could have a greater impact separately or something like that. Norman says, I publicly defended Bridgen when he was, in my view, wrongly accused of anti-Semitism and kicked out of the Conservative Party for it. However, in the last couple of weeks, he has really gone down the anti-Israel rabbit hole, culminating yesterday in a statement in Parliament accusing Israel of genocide and of murdering 2 Catholic women in Gaza. It turns out that story is almost certainly not true. I provided him a link to a comprehensive report showing it was likely Hamas who killed the women. Yeah. In effect, Andrew Bridgen is going through what Norman went through in the days after October the 7th, when there were all these people who had, we've spoken about it before, who had backed Norman when he was talking about COVID and the vaccines and all the rest of it. And then they suddenly discover after October, oh my God, he's a Jew. I had no idea. So now he's objecting to Hamas paragliding into Israel and killing all the people on the kibbutzes. He was so sound when he was just talking about the vaccines. And Andrew Bridgen, Andrew Bridgen has been on the Mark Steyn show, and I certainly wouldn't like to think that he's in favour of those Hamas atrocities, but he does seem to have been, as Norman puts it, a little, at the very least, a little naive in just going. The whole thing with coverage of this particular issue is that the Hamas and the Palestinians in general are master manipulators of the Western media, because the Western media check nothing. The big thing recently was the so-called Israeli bombing of the hospital, which turned out not to be an Israeli bombing at all. But that was peddled by the BBC. The BBC hadn't checked it. They were just going on. Again, a lot of the problem with this is because the guys who are their correspondents on the ground, they don't do this with Israel. They don't have some, hardcore Likudnik Jew doing their Israeli coverage, but for their Gaza coverage, they have some Gazan who's basically, those guys all had special access to the invasion of Israel. They all knew hours in advance, and they were all there getting the film and getting the footage. It's absolutely disgraceful the way the BBC and the Associated Press and Reuters and all these other people basically use semi-operatives of Hamas as their correspondents. But as I said, this is Britain's Jews, I think, are in a particularly awful situation, because I don't think they realize, to put it mildly, I was talking about a couple of weeks ago about an actress that I hadn't seen while I happened to be sitting next to at dinner a while back about this, and I think it's only Simon Schama, for example, is another one. He's shocked by the anti-Semitism everywhere, but he's supported all the people and policies that have led to the anti-Semitism. And now he's shocked. He was on stage. I urge you not just, there's a clip from that gets played, which is him saying it's pathetic that Nigel Farage and I, from that Monk debate, that Nigel Farage and I are so hung up about all the girls being raped in Europe. It's we seem completely sex obsessed, And it's probably because we don't get enough nookie ourselves, as he said. And, I push back on that, and that's what turned the debate, and that's what cost him the debate. But there's another interesting moment there when he's talking about Muslims, and he's saying that his Muslim newsagent in London is an absolutely splendid chap. His Muslim newsagent. So he goes there, passes that guy every morning, before he gets on the tube or whatever. And he gives he gives the guy £1 or whatever newspapers cost now, and the guy gives him his copy of The Guardian, and he says, great, have a great day, and walks on. He doesn't know any Muslims. They're a self-segregating group. And because you've imported them on the scale that Simon Schama wanted to, he ended that debate by reading that lousy Emma Lazarus piece of garbage, so-called doggerel poetry, that is, the French gave America a fabulous Statue of Liberty, and the Americans turned it into a lousy statue of mass immigration by stapling that lousy poem to it. He read out that poem. He was talking about that poem, and he read out the John Donne "No Man is an Island" poem at the end of that Monk debate. That was his final thing, just to read out that poem. And that's nice and artsy of you to read out John Donne, "No Man is an Island." But you are an island now. You're an island in a sea of Muslims, and you know nothing about them except when you hand over your quid to buy The Guardian every morning to your Muslim newsagent. You know nothing about them. And the fact is, you've now admitted them in such numbers that for your party, the Labour Party, it's not to retain electoral viability. They have to kiss up to Muslim voters and ignore Jewish voters. Stephen Fry, another thing. Stephen Fry, he's just done a thing. I think it's going to be the Channel 4 Christmas broadcast. Stephen Fry said, everyone, because I played Jeeves in Jeeves and Wooster, everyone thinks I'm quintessentially English, but in fact I'm a Jew. And why is everybody being so beastly to the Jews? Can't we all just get it? Well, you were writing to The Guardian, taking the Palestinian side on the Palestine, and in fact actually saying the entire existence of the State of Israel should be put up, up in the air. There won't be Jews in the UK. There won't be Jews in France. There won't be Jews in Canada. There won't be Jews in New York City because of the policies that the official Jews, the Jewish establishment, has supported. Anyway, so these are awkward things. One of the problems, because I think Norman actually had a hell of a shock when suddenly all the tweeters who'd liked him were suddenly piling on him as a Zionist shill. The left has an advantage because even though they don't claim, even though they appear incoherent, on the one hand, they're all hot for the muzzies, but at the same time, who like to throw the gay guys off buildings. But at the same time, they're all for the LGBT QWERTY crowd and all the rest of it. And that seems totally incoherent. It seems a completely incoherent coalition. But the one thing they have in common is they're all about, on that side, more state power. So it doesn't really matter whether it's mass immigration or it's COVID lockdowns or it's climate change. The answer is always more state power. And the right has it's much harder to take all the various dissident positions to that monolithic solution of more state power and knit them together. I was talking a couple of months ago to one of our grooming gang victims who had an indomitable, fearless spirit and a great survivor. But she said, rather amusingly, that she didn't quite understand how, now as a grooming gang survivor, she was getting tweeted about all the COVID vaccine victims. And then she concluded it must be because my show had featured both those topics, the girls who were the victims of the industrial scale gang rape by Pakistani Muslim gangs in every town up and down the spine of England, and then the various victims of the COVID vaccines. And my show did both of them, and so I assume she wasn't the only one who thought that the two things went together. And as Norman discovered, and has now discovered anew with Andrew Bridgen, in fact, a lot of these miscellaneous topics don't go together, which is one reason why it's much more difficult to build a kind of opposition to the Uni Party. But thank you for that question, Norman. Let's see what else we've